Hello. Hello. Welcome to a review of The Boys Season 4. What the fuck? Featuring my giant red frog plushie in the background. Uh, obviously Season 4 just finished, and it was pretty crazy. That ending was pretty crazy, though. Um, I think I'll just start off with like my overall feelings about the season though, because it ended really strong. But I'd say overall my feelings are somewhere more in the middle. Uh, the first season still reigns supreme as the best one for me. It just has perfect pacing, perfect level of world building with each episode, just like fantastic. Season three is probably my second favorite, just because it had such a strong through line all the way through. The only thing not bumping season three down a little bit is the last episode did a little bit too much. And I know this is a very common take, but the last episode did a lot of table resetting in the way where you're thinking like, okay, how much longer can this show realistically go on? And season four kind of answers that question because if you've seen season four, and if you haven't, I'll just tell you right now, but they're very clearly setting it up for season 5 to be the final season. Like season 4 is honestly sort of a reverse season 3. And I didn't think season three's ending was that bad, but it was definitely the weakest part of an otherwise great season. Season 4 is a season that takes a little bit to get going, has some episodes that are, a little weird, a little unnecessary, certain plot lines and things that don't really come together. It's similar to season 2 in that way, which I'd still say I think season 2 was my least favorite season. But like season 2 had really strong stuff. It had like the Stormfront stuff, you know, the Homelander and Stormfront stuff. Man, there really wasn't that much. I guess the introduction of Newman, uh, but like it didn't. Season 2 didn't really have a clear focus. It felt like, and season 4 is kind of like that too, where it doesn't really like there. There's a really good Sister Sage is a new character introduced whose power is being the smartest person in the world, which is a strange and kind of interesting power for a show like The Boys to tackle, where most of the power sets in The Boys are very visible, very showy, very they make themselves celebrities out of their power, or their power is really gross and weird, and a power like super intelligence in a story like the in a unit in the Boys universe is very interesting, and I think it's done very well. I think that's the strongest overall plot line in this season is the stuff with Sister Sage and Homelander. It's like who is Homelander? Who it is similar to season 2 in that Homelander gets recruits new people to help him basically. Like a new female character comes along to help Homelander, but I think the Sister Sage Homelander dynamic is actually a lot more interesting than the Stormfront Homelander dynamic, because it's not sexual. Like it's the schemer and the schemer behind the scenes and the front facing villain, which is like fun. That's a fun premise, and they do a really good job with that. It's other characters' plot lines where it's like sometimes even depending on the episode, it's like sometimes there's a really good subplot in this season about Huey and his dad, and that stuff works great. Then that subplot ends, and it feels like they like, well, what do we do with Huey now? Like we don't really know what to do with Huey. It doesn't seem like they really knew what to do with Starlight either for a lot of it, which I would argue has been the case since like season 1 or season 2. I think Huey and Starlight both increasingly get they're like the main characters sort of season 1. The people through which you view this world. By these later seasons that's very much not the case. Like I'd argue Butcher and Homelander have become the more focal point characters, and I think that's because of the audience kind of latching onto them as like the cool ones. I could make a whole separate video about how the Boys fandom does not understand what makes the boys good. Uh, but that's a separate discussion. I think, as someone who does understand what makes the boys good, haha, uh, that this season was probably one of the weaker ones, but I think it was still quite good. It had a lot of good it had a lot of good subplots going on, a lot of great character moments. I'd say like 3 out of the 8 episodes were some of my favorite like were like top of what the series has to offer. Uh, and the other 5 episodes were various ranges of good to pretty to very good. I don't know. It's like the boys quality level has remained consistent. I think I think it helps that the season closed strong. It's sort of a reverse season 3, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, that the boys season 3 came out the gate running strong, had a clear, focused plot line they were following, and then in the finale sort of dropped a lot of it. I think out of fear of we're moving too fast and we don't want to end the show yet. Season 4 is the opposite, where there's a lot of disconnected plot lines, a lot of things where you're not really sure where they're going, you're not really sure if it works or if it's necessary, and then you get to the end, and it's not like, oh my god, now I understand the purpose of every plot line before. Frenchie and Kamiko still have absolutely pointless plot lines that go nowhere, as they do in every single season. But, like, the finale at least the finale promised an exciting season 5, whereas the season 3 finale promised kind of more of the same for season 4, but just like with Homelander, like the only part of the season 3 finale that was really promising was Homelander killing that guy in broad daylight, which honestly didn't end up mattering that much. Like, it was kind of just one step in the further growth of power and influence that Homelander was getting, where it's like the people don't care if he's a fascist, they like him anyway, because political analogy. And I think the political analogies are definitely getting more overt. I mean, the plot of this season is literally about Homelander and Sage trying to stage a political coup. Like, that's the through line of what they're trying to stop, is Newman, Homelander, and Sage political machinations. But that's one of the stronger aspects of the show. I think season 4 is similar to season 2 in a lot of ways. You've got Homelander scheming with someone else. I feel like season 2 and season 4 focus much more on the political aspect of, like, they both have far more Newman screen time, versus season 3 and season 1, which go for very clean cut. It's like an alternating season thing, where it's like, season 1, we gotta kill Homelander. Season 2, maybe we can slow down on killing Homelander a little bit. Maybe there's some other things we need to, like, deal with first. And then season 3 is like, no, we really gotta kill Homelander. And then season 4 is like, well, this stuff with Newman's a little more pressing. But then, of course, it's all lumped together. And by the end of season 4, you're just saying, all right, now we really gotta kill Homelander. Like, for real this time, they have to kill Homelander. Season 5 is the last season. It has to be. There's no way they can, like, keep up this fight without killing Homelander. Because each season he ends, I feel like each season he ends in a more powerful place than he was before, except maybe season 2. And each of those times, he goes more and more. There is sort of a weird tension in season 4 where it's like, we, the audience, know that Homelander is the real rising issue, but then you cut back to the boys, and they're like, every week they've got like a weird little mission they're going on that only vaguely maybe will help with the prospect of killing Homelander. But I think that fits well with Butcher's arc in the season, where he's conflicted between I need to kill Homelander before I die, and well, but maybe I should work with my team and do what the boys want me to do. And the more I do this Butcher impression, the more awful it is. Oi! But you go what I'm saying. The Butcher plotline's really good in this season too. I'm trying not to spoil too much about what happens, just vague character things. There's a reason I haven't talked about the other new seven member Firecracker yet. She's not an uninteresting character. She just doesn't really add all that much to the plot. Like, she's kind of just Stormfront, but instead of being a full-on Nazi, she's just like a... She's like, if Homelander is Trump, Firecracker is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, she's just kind of this lackey for him. But there is a bit more to her going on than just being Homelander's lackey. It's just, I think season 4 doesn't really do that much exploring of her. I think season 4 in general has a bit of a problem with, the more that I talk about it, the more that I'm listing more problems than I thought there were. But I think season 4 has a bit of a problem with, like, the beats of what's happening feel focused, like this happens because it needs to happen, or this happens because this is the idea we came up with for the episode, rather than this happens based on what the characters would do and what their motivations are. Which I don't feel like there's a problem. The other seasons have really had that much, but I did notice it a lot more in this one with certain characters, especially certain characters like A-Train is wonderfully well written this season, and the Deep is consistently well written as like the asshole that he is. But then there's other characters like I mentioned, Huey and Starlight and Frenchie and Kamiko, where it's just kind of like this is all over the place and doesn't really have a clear through line all the way through the season. And you know, hopefully with the season 5 raising the stakes significantly, there will be more team stuff. I think would be good. Like if you don't have the time, or I don't want to say the skills, but like if you can't write each of these characters individual storylines on their own that are interesting, focus on the team up more. At least with the boys themselves. With the Supes, it's kind of like whatever. But, like, focus more on how they function as a team rather than Frenchie and Kamiko go off to do this side thing no one cares about so I can check my phone while they're talking. Yeah, it's just like, that would be my hope for season 5. But yeah, this was a more negative review than I expected it to be. I think, because considering that every time I sat down to watch an episode and then finished and then watched the episode, I fully enjoyed it. Like, this is still a good show. This is still a good season. I'm still enjoying the material, despite certain Huey Tech Knight subplots. I don't want to go too deep into that, but that plotline could have been fine. So that so easily could have been a fine plotline and episode. It just, they dragged it out for too long. They dragged out the bit that really shouldn't even be a bit for too long. If you've heard the discourse, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just like stuff like that where it's like, yeah, outside of the weirdness of presenting that way, it also just shows it's like, what are you guys doing with Huey? Like, what did the plotline with his dad that was really good, how did this, why is this built on it? Is anything building off of this at all? It's hard to tell. Season 5, I hope for more follow through with characters and character motivations. Remember, because in season 1 is a very character driven show. I mean, I would argue all the seasons kind of are, but like, if you look at the first season, you go back to the beginning, everything is driven by Huey and Starlight and their role in this new scenario. It's driven by Butcher's Revenge Quest and Homelander Homelanderness. Like season 1 is just a very character driven show that also does great world building to like build up on that. Whereas I think now we've gotten to season 4 and it's a little, the world building's not quite as strong, the character work isn't quite as strong, the plot is a little more get from one point to the next kind of. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it's still really good. It's still good. I just know they can do better. So my review is more critical because, like, if this was a Disney superhero show, I'd probably be focusing a lot more on the positive points. But I know the boys can do better. So I'm just kind of like, let's do better. Season 5 is gonna be awesome. I think part of the issue is just the story going on for too long, and I don't even think the story of the boys universe is gonna like end once season 5 ends, but because Gen V showed there's a lot of potential future world building there, but I think specifically the story of Homelander and Butcher and Huey and Starlight, the story of the boys versus the Seven, is something that is reaching its season 4. You can see the stretching pains of stretching the premise a little thin. So I'm very, very glad that next season is going to be the last season, and I think it's going to be a great season. So yeah, if you, it's kind of weird when you make a review of a 4th season of a TV show. There's no like, well, if you haven't seen The Boys, you should check it out. Like, you're here because you already watched season 4, or you're here because you watched the show in the past and you've heard various things about season 4 and you're curious what my opinion is on it. So if you haven't seen season 4 and you liked the rest of the show, I'd say keep watching. Even if you don't end up liking season 4 that much, you will be excited for season 5, I think. And if you've already watched the show, feel free to comment with your thoughts on some of the plot points. You know, that'll be all for this video. Arrivederci!